Chapter 312. The Enslaved Bride, Part 9. Tia could not able to sleep that day, and remained awake until his next shift. During his resting hours he built many more castles and even more impossible plans. He decided he would quit his job as soon as he received the £1,000,000, immigrate to the eastern region of Sudan and settle in a beautiful city called Kassala. During his years in jail he had heard a great deal about that city. He was told that Kassala was the most famous city in Sudan, and known for the beauty of its nature and its women. The women were exceptionally beautiful because the people of Kassala were mixed races of Arabs, Ethiopians, Eritreans, and Bejas. There was a famous saying that stated, "The people of Kassala are good people." Almost every singer in Sudan sang a song in honor of the beauty of Kassala's girls and nature. So, if he went to Kassala with £1,000,000 in his hand, Tia could make a fresh start. With those dreams and great expectations, Tia left his hut 2 hours earlier than his usual time. He waited for another hour under a nema tree for the tractor driver and other workers to arrive. Every now and then, he thrust his hand into his pocket and touched the little object Olivia and Malwell had given him. He had never seen such an object before. The two friends had to assure him 10 times that it was not a harmful object before he was finally convinced to take it. 14 hours had passed since they gave it to him. Ever since, over and over, his hand went inside his pocket and touched the little thing to make sure it was still there. That little precious object represented 1,000,000 opportunities for Tia. His job was to deliver it somewhere, and wait for a response. If he succeeded in delivering it and in getting a response, then, and only then he would get the cash. Failure to do so would mean that he would remain a bar Milo for the rest of his life. Tia touched his pocket 1,000,000 times before the other bar Milos showed up. For the first time, his co-workers saw a hint of happiness in his grave face. For no specific reason, all his co-workers hated him and hated to see his face. Actually, from day one, all the bar Milos disliked him and strived hard to get rid of him. The supervisor, who was usually the tractor driver, gave him the hardest work and conspired with other workers to make things difficult for him. Nevertheless, Tia did not complain or quit the job. It happened to be Tia's turn to be a sniper on top of the container that day, the most coveted job after driving the tractor. No other bar Milo would exchange his sniper position for gold or silver. Who would like to run on the streets for 8 hours at night and carry heavy barrels on his head and chase a speeding tractor? Besides that, the sniper was at least able to view people's houses, and if he had sharp vision he might spot a sleeping beauty somewhere or a husband making love with his fully naked wife at the early hours of the day. Tia surprised everyone when he declined his turn and expressed his willingness to run after the tractor. It was not just for a day, but he was prepared to give his sniper position to anyone for a week. The supervisor had to cast lots to choose the lucky man. The winner happened to be Tia's most bitter enemy. The supervisor took Tia aside and consulted with him as to whether he was still prepared to give his turn to his sworn enemy Kuko, who holds a particularly intense, deep-seated hatred. Tia told his supervisor that he wouldn't mind, even if the chosen one happened to be the devil himself. The supervisor was amazed by such unexpected generosity, and in his heart wondered if Tia had changed from a demon to an angel. Tia began his shift with much energy and a merry heart. He sang a tawdry song with vigor. I look at her and laugh and laugh. I run away from her and come back to her. I measure her mouth with beads, but I found the beads revealing mystery. This girl a man like me, whose dear has already escaped, can never get. This was the most favorite song for the loafers and the drunkards in Sudan. It was officially banned in Sudan, and everyone caught singing it would be given 6 months of imprisonment. That day, our friend Tia was seen by other bar Milos approaching private toilets, opening the small lids, grabbing the heavy buckets, carrying them on his head, running after the tractor, and passing them to the snipers. He was doing more than he was supposed to do. His duty was to open the lid, pull out the bucket brimming full of sludge, and leave it for the second man to carry and hand to the snipers. However, that night our friend Tia was overly excited and hence went the extra mile. After 5 hours of continuous labor, Tia at last reached the house. It was highly guarded with policemen and police dogs. More than 20 tough armed cops and 6 voracious dogs surrounded the house. Tia suddenly understood why the job was highly paid and why Malwell and Olivia could not perform the duty themselves and found someone else to do it. What he could not understand was why the person to whom the little object should be delivered did not come out and receive it. As was his daily routine, Tia approached the house and continued his work. The policemen saw him and ignored him. Every one of them put his fingers in his nose to protect his lungs from the deadly pestilence. Even the dogs kept themselves out of Tia's way. He bent over the men's toilet, lifted up the lid, pulled out the bucket, ran after the tractor and delivered it to the snipers. After that, he returned swiftly to the women's toilet and flipped over the cover. At this point, his speed decreased considerably. While his left hand was flipping over the lid, his right hand reached into his pocket and removed the little object. Then, his right hand traveled beneath the small door, until it reached the small circle. Like a cat sensing its way in the darkness, Tia's hand reached beyond the small circle and tossed the object into the interior portion of the women's toilet. In that critical moment, for the first time in the history of a Muslim household, the interior and the exterior spaces of a women's toilet were connected. Tia was on pins and needles until the object landed in the secret world. His first mission was successful. One would have been more likely to enter the Holy of Holies in the temple than the women's section in the house of a mu'allana or a mullah in a Muslim country, for the house of such a man had a forbidden section that was considered by divine revelation to be taboo ground. The human beings who lived there were like totem animals. No mortal being could enter that section if he was not the man of the house himself or a close kin, such as a brother. There was no other way to get into that taboo ground except through the little hole that Tia used to pass the object, which now sat waiting to be noticed. The totem person who happened to see, and pick up the object, was a young girl in her flowering age. She was the same girl for whom the public had recently turned the city upside down. Her name was Ikhlas, which means loyalty. Since the day she had been stolen from her village in the south of Sudan and brought to the western region and sold as a slave, Ikhlas' mind had never known peace. For 11 months she had experienced every kind of abuse, rape, torture, suffering, and humiliation. The worst period was the time she had spent in Bit al-Zabir's prostitutes' huts. She had been chained, beaten, circumcised, and genitally mutilated, and raped. Over 50 men had raped her in less than a month. The evil woman had done everything within her power to make sure that Ikhlas was tamed and that her spirit was broken. She named her Ikhlas to make sure that she would live the rest of her life loyal to her. She was known as Ayan and she was a Christian before the Muslims had raided her village and kidnapped her. The evil woman subjected her to brainwashing and filled her heart with fear. Ikhlas was made to believe that if she attempted to escape she would either be shot by Bit al-Zabir's armed men or killed by her ravenous dogs. Ikhlas accepted her kismet in life and remained in the prostitution camps of Bit al-Zabir until fate sent her to Mu'allana's house. One day, Bit al-Zabir came to her hut and made a deal with her. According to the deal, Ikhlas had to choose between prostitution and slavery. If she accepted the deal, she would be transferred from the house of vice to the house of virtue. Her duty in that house would be to serve the wife of the Imam of the Grand Mosque. She would be an unpaid maidservant. If she found favor in the eyes of the blessed Imam, then he might sleep with her. Otherwise, she would be treated with respect and given a room to sleep in. She would not be beaten, if she fulfilled her duty and obeyed the blessed Imam and his virtuous wife. Of course, Ikhlas thought that the new place would be much better than where she lived. Before she sent her, Bit al-Zabir told Ikhlas that she would be brought back if she did not show enough loyalty to the holy Imam and his revered wife. As soon as Ikhlas came to the Imam's house, she was converted to Islam against her wishes and taught how to pray. From the beginning, Mu'allana's wife was aware that her husband slept at night with the new maidservant. Naturally, Ikhlas found the new home much better than the previous one. She could not think of running away because she had no knowledge of her way back to the south of Sudan from where she got abducted. Besides that, she had no relative who remained alive. She knew the Muslim Janjaweed terrorists who stole her from her home had massacred her entire family and people. Ikhlas lived in the so-called house of virtue until she was impregnated by Mu'allana and in due time delivered his child. After the trial, the Sharia court ruled in Mu'allana's favor and Ikhlas became his Jariya or female slave. Therefore, by divine order, Mu'allana is allowed to continue enslaving Ikhlas and have sex with her without the benefit of marriage. In all that, she had no knowledge of the trial until Tia smuggled that little object inside the house through the toilet. Every day Ikhlas woke up at 4 a.m. to perform her morning prayer. The loud voice of the muezzin calling people to prayer was her daily alarm. Mu'allana's house was 1 block away from the Grand Mosque, therefore, Ikhlas heard the loud shouting of the muezzin 5 times a day, as if he were standing right over her head and calling the faithful to prayer. Ikhlas heard that voice 5 times a day, and it regulated her daily life. Her day began when the muezzin shouted those monotonous words in her ears. The first thing she was told to do was to wash her body in order to perform her morning prayer. Her religious cleansing began in the toilet. When that stage was done, she had to go to a clean place and do her ablution. After that, she had to go and wake up the wife of Mu'allana. By then, Mu'allana had already gone to the mosque to lead the faithful in their first prayer of the day. After Mu'allana's wife also did her religious cleansing, she would likewise lead Ikhlas in prayer. When the prayer was over, Ikhlas would start her daily work, whereas the wife would return to her bed to continue her sleep until the sunrise. Ikhlas was required to clean the dishes, prepare the breakfast, sweep the entire house, and then begin the cooking. Cooking Sudanese food was the most difficult cooking in the world. Ikhlas would start the cooking an hour after the morning prayer, and finish it an hour before the noon prayer. While she was cooking the food, she also expected to wash the clothes and make kisra or injera, a Sudanese and a Ethiopian bread. It is better to be a bar milo than a kisra maker. The housewife or maidservant had to spend 2 to 3 hours every day in a hut as small as a toilet and make the kisra. She exposed her entire body to the flames and smoke of burning wood, while she made this accursed bread. She would cough continuously, sweat terribly, and weep rivers of water. Besides those daily duties, Ikhlas was required, once or twice a week, to massage, rub, and shave the body of the wife of the house and then do the same to her husband. She worked throughout the day as an unpaid maidservant and at night a sex slave. Those were just a few things, in a long list, which Ikhlas was supposed to do in the house of Mu'allana Abdul Razik without pay. Besides all her duties, Ikhlas had to care of her newborn baby girl, Sakina. It is an Islamic law that a child of a slave is a slave by birth. So, Sakina was born a slave and she would live and die a slave. On that particular morning, however, Ikhlas' daily routine was modified by the presence of that small object in the women's toilet. At first she thought it was Mu'allana's wife who had brought that object inside the toilet and forgot to take it back. She had no reason to doubt her conclusion, because she knew no mortal being would dare to enter that taboo ground except for herself and her master's wife. Mu'allana himself was not permitted under any circumstances to step inside that forbidden territory. Even a god, a dog, or a demon might be executed if it was seen entering inside the women's toilet. Women, in that Muslim society, are not allowed to reveal their faces, hands, and legs, and woe to any man who dared to enter the women's toilet and view the privates of a woman. After a second thought, however, Ikhlas began to doubt her conclusion. She was sure that Imam's wife had never brought a cassette over here. All the cassettes in the house contained recitation of the Holy Quran and nothing else. According to the Prophet Muhammad, singing is haram or forbidden, and any musical instrument is the tool of the devil. Mu'allana's wife would not commit such an abomination by bringing the verses of the holy book inside the toilet. Accordingly, Ikhlas concluded that somehow that cassette was smuggled inside the toilet by someone. Such a conclusion filled her heart with indescribable fear. She remembered that some boys liked to look at her whenever she ventured outside the house, accompanied by Mu'allana's wife. Thus, she concluded that the cassette most probably was sent to her by one of those boys. Her first reaction was to destroy it before she woke the woman of the house. She did not want to be accused of having an affair with any boy, for that was one of the things which Mu'allana and his wife had warned her against. If anything like that was found out, she was told the consequence would be bad. Ikhlas carried the cassette with her and rushed to her room to destroy it. Even though, when she reached her room, a sixth sense changed her mind and forced her to listen to its message. With shaking hands, Ikhlas inserted the cassette in a tape recorder and pressed the play button. "Our dear sister, Ikhlas," spoke the voice of a female in a Dinka language, "we heard about your problem, and we would like to help you. My name is Olivia, and my husband's name is Malwal. I am from the Azanda tribe and my husband is a Dinka. It does not matter to which tribe we belong, but we are Southerners like you and would love to offer our lives to help girls in your situation. If you want to escape out of Mu'allana's house, we are prepared to assist you. We know about your sad story and we want to free you from slavery. This cassette is sent to you through a good friend of ours who works as a bar Milo. You can reply to us by recording on the same cassette or by writing a letter. Our friend visits the toilet every night or early hours of the morning to perform his duty. You can throw the cassette or the letter through the small circle in the toilet and he will pick it up when he sees it. It truly hurts us to know that a sister from the south lives as a slave, and no one is ready to rescue her." The plan worked well, and Tia got the return message after a couple of days in the form of a short note, along with the same cassette. The letter and the cassette contained brief messages, written and spoken by Ikhlas herself. "I am an orphan girl. The Muslim Arab Janjaweed killed my parents in front of my eyes in the south and brought me forcibly to this region. At first I was sold as a slave to a bad woman who made me a prostitute. Then, she sent me to the house of the Imam of the Grand Mosque. The Imam and his wife made me their slave girl. Mu'allana impregnated me without marrying me. As you must be knowing, the Sharia court justified the action of Mu'allana and forced me to live in his house as his slave. I have no home, family, relatives, or anyone else in Sudan to look after me. I appreciate your readiness to help me to escape, however, I cannot leave my shelter and wander aimlessly in the streets. I have a baby daughter. If you can grant me a home after I leave, then I am ready to run away from Mu'allana's house. Once again, I appreciate your love and concern. Your sister, Ikhlas." Olivia and Malwal did not expect the conditions that Ikhlas had placed on her escape. They were prepared to do anything to help her run away, but they had not thought for a second that they would have to help her find a permanent shelter. They thought she might ask them to help her travel to the south, or any city in Sudan and meet her family. In a country where almost everybody was homeless, or temporarily sheltered, it would be impossible to help with finding permanent accommodation. Furthermore, Sudan was the only country where citizens became refugees in their own homeland. Ikhlas's condition made the two friends helpless, and therefore, they sadly dropped the idea, and continued their search for Ayan elsewhere. The couple had no idea that Ikhlas and Ayan is same the person. So far, no one had received a reward for his labor in the bloody conflict between sheep and wolves, except for Tia. The day he was paid his £1 million, he quitted his disgusting job, abandoned his grave-like hut, left the city in which he was treated as an outcast and slave, and travelled to his promised land in the eastern region of Sudan. Tia even forsook his own name. When someone in the train asked him who he was, he said his name was Abdullah Mayari. Abdullah was the name of the judge who sent him to Shala Central Prison, and Mayuri was his supervisor and the tractor driver of the night train. According to Tia's limited understanding of life, those two citizens were the most powerful men he had ever met. Abdullah Mayuri reached the lighted city, Kassala, after 2 days of journey. The first thing he did was to rent a house and open a house restaurant. In his restaurant, he specialized in cooking what the drunkards called al-biasim, or the smiling. It was the roasted head of a slaughtered sheep or goat. All over Sudan, the drunkards love nothing more than to eat the heads, legs, and ears of goats and sheep. The heads and ears were cooked as a barbecue, and a soup was made out of the legs. In a few months, Mayuri's restaurant became famous, and Abdullah made a fortune. Shortly, Abdullah Mayuri's dream came true. He married a lovely, young girl and begot sons and daughters. His children all went to school, and none of them inherited the socially abhorrent profession of their father.